You're watching Seventh Circle Gaming, and today on the channel we have something a little bit different. Just looking through the Steam new releases page and came across this game called Weird RPG, and it looked interesting, so we're going to have a little discussion about it and see if it's worth your time. We'll get started here in just a second, like we always do with full disclosures. Pause the video now and read through these at your leisure, or if you'd prefer not to, then don't, and we'll get right into the screenshots. The first one that we're going to share with you is just to illustrate what the world of Weird RPG looks like. It's a simple polygon generated world. It's an action RPG, you might even call it a twin stick shooter style. But what's of particular importance is the minimalist style, again, of the user interface. Everything is all of the important information is in the corners or on the bottom, leaving the primary gaming area perfectly clear so the player can see exactly what's going on. So, again, though, do note the low polygon count style or art style. Next, we're going to share with you another screenshot. This one is the inventory screen. There's a couple of other things that the player can look at, including backpacks and all. But the reason that we're sharing this with you is to, again, just to belabor the point, the low polygon count style of the game. That player character is completely generated by the game. It's not something that the player has any choice in. But the items that the player character equips are something that the player has some sort of a decision about. And each of those items, as you might expect for an action RPG, has statistics attached that will modify things like health or hit points, defense attacks, and attack speed. So with that said, we're going to move right along and start compiling things into scores. We start like we always do with Immersion. As we showed you with that first screenshot, the game world is an isometric viewpoint. It's very, very simple polygons. Just, if we might make a slight subjective statement, it is part of the charm of the game, the fact that we'll probably run on a toaster, given enough persuasion. And the game does use statistics focus to try to get players invested into the game world. All of the game in-game objects have statistics modifiers attached to them. Combat is fairly fast-paced against large numbers of enemies and boss creatures. The game, in its Steam blurb, claims that boss creatures are the main focus of the game. It does have a story that loosely connects the events together. And so the game, for its immersion score, has earned a 4 out of 15. And now then, we'll move right along and let's talk about difficulty. For difficulty, Weird RPG has earned a 4 out of 15. It has, as we saw, a fairly minimal user interface. The commands are also fairly simple. Not a lot to remember, no crazy amounts of combinations that will require 3 hands or something. The game works reasonably with either a gamepad or a keyboard and mouse, which is somewhat unusual for an action RPG, or a hack and slash RPG, pick your term. There is no difficulty option that we were able to determine, so it's really down to the player interactions and the player choices that will impact how difficult the game is. And on that note, let's move on, and we're going to talk now about the lasting appeal. What it is about this game that's going to keep players invested in it. What's going to keep it installed on hard drives. Well, the game, as we tried to illustrate, has very simplistic gameplay. There's not a lot of fancy commands to remember. The story isn't really seemingly all that present. It works with a gamepad or a keyboard and mouse. Players can spend as much time with the game as they really have spare, so that's something that's kind of in the game's favor. It's also highly subjective, so we'll suggest handfuls of salt with that one. Some grinding may be required to progress through the game. We did notice that there were some uh, rare resources that players would need to collect in order to purchase from the vendors the higher quality items. Still, the game has earned a 4 out of 15 for lasting appeal. And we'll just finish off this very short review with the overall score. Overall, Weird RPG has earned a 4 out of 15 in its current state. And we'll just caveat these next couple of statements as being very highly subjective. And so, grains of salt over both shoulders, probably in this case. The player's interest might decrease as they play through the game because there really doesn't seem to be much to it. It's very simple story, bad thing happened, go kill monsters. Okay. And that's neither for it or against it. The art style, being all polygons, is sort of retro, so it might appeal to some players based on that. The game is easy to play, but difficult to master. If we were searching for a comparison, we might call this a kind of Zelda-like game. It certainly seems to have that style of play. So, players looking for a Zelda-like game, a modern Zelda-like game, and they weren't interested in Breath of the Wild because they don't have a Switch or something like that, might be interested in Weird RPG. So, the whole point of that is the 4 out of 15 is, of course, to be taken with a little bit of a grain of salt. Players might be looking for this sort of thing, but in an objective sense, a 4 out of 15 is what the game has earned. So, congratulations, you've reached the end of the video. That's all there is to say about Weird RPG from 7th Circle Gaming. We'll see you on the next one. Leave any comments about Weird RPG you might have in the comments section below, and goodbye.